Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm Jacob McGill, and with me here are Rob McGraw and Zach Stuckey, and we just kind of started making this up a few weeks ago. I picked a name of this, which is called the B2B Growth Lab, and that's because I found myself next to some people who seem to really have a deep understanding of the ins and outs of the things that make a business work. I myself am a bit more of a systems guy, which means although I can do some great things for leads, conversion, sales, blah, 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 there's some huge gaps in how I can help businesses. For example, Rob is a specialist in what we'd call the internals. I'm going to let him, say it in a lot clearer language, but how to get all the people inside of an organization, I guess, on the same team. And then Zach and all the conversations that I've had with him seems to have an innate understanding of what the customers want, who they actually are, why they would do business with you, how all these pieces work together. And it just seemed to make sense that instead of just talking amongst ourselves, we'd start having these conversations with you. And so this is our launch, our first episode, and we are here to kind of wrestle with the very first topic, and that is essentially working with a vision, having a vision for your business in these different ways and these different forms, and how it all starts with that. The tagline that we put together for this is, if you can't clearly define it, then you can't scale it. And so, with that being the case, maybe you guys want to take a couple minutes each, introduce yourselves, and then we can start kind of unpacking this subject.
Sure, I'll go first. I'm Zach Stuckey. I'm the CEO of Ignition Point Strategies. What we do is we help B2B companies stop losing money to high customer turnover and low sales conversions. And we do this, like Jacob said, through better understanding your customer and why they buy from you. We could practically write their biographies when we're done. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. And thanks, Jacob. My name's Rob McGraw. I'm the CEO of Full Swing Training and Development. We are a specialist in the human part of your organization, from screening for job fit and culture fit all the way through to executive coaching. If you have people problems, they're getting in the way of you achieving your top and bottom line goals, we want to be your partner. We'll help you solve that and put it on your balance sheet. So let's get into vision. Like, if they don't know where we're going, how can we expect them to follow? Sometimes we flip over leadership and we say followership. And I think vision's key to getting people just to follow voluntarily, right? It's not command and control. It's, here's where we're going. Who's with me?
Got it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Rob. I had a mentor who he grew a business to be almost $2 billion thinking this way. And he said, first you have the vision, and the vision attracts the people. And then the people build the processes that make the vision a reality. It's vision, then people, then processes. And I know I'm going to piss a lot of people off when I say this, but this cuts completely the opposite to what we get from eggheads like I think it's Jim Collins who wrote Good to Great, right? He says first who, then what. It's backwards. You have to know what you want and where you're going so that you can inspire your team to build it.
I think that's brilliant. I love how, we're figuring this stuff out, and so we're going to be using different language, as we should. So it's going to be a completely confusing mishmash by the end of it, because we're all saying the same things with different words. But from one of the mentors I've worked with, that's the formula he gave me. It was mission, vision, and then architecture. And, as the quote systems guy in this panel, that's one of the things I've found continuously across the board is people get really stuck into the how of a build, and they sometimes aren't even connected to the what, never mind the why. And so you get people who are like, I don't know how far down a tunnel, unfortunately, like boring in the wrong direction almost entirely. And so, yeah, I've just seen that like so consistently. I guess one of the things is, if that's the case, like if that's the actual issue, I was able to recognize it and bring it to the table. Like, how would you guys solve for that? What are the solutions that we need to take a look at before, you know, you end up coming out in the completely wrong direction and putting more effort and energy in?
Rob, I went first on the last one. Do you want to take this one?
It's an interesting question. Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you're running too headlong and don't know where you're going, there's no time like the present to just pump the brakes and maybe set up a visioning statement with you know, your circle of trust, right? Whoever that might be. You could do this kind of work in only a few hours. Put up a visioning board, ask the right questions. Where do we see ourselves in 5 years? Who do we aspire to be? Maybe a longer timeline than that. And make sure it's motivating, right? Do a little bit of wordsmithing. And at the end of it, it doesn't have to be perfect. Everything is subject to change in the long run. So, but get something that's good and workable and that's inspiring, and then start sharing it, right? And give yourself permission to grow and improve every day. So, yeah, it only takes a little bit of time.
So before you respond, Zach, they do that, and then because they have the poster that they're going to hang up inside the office, do they immediately start plastering that on the outside of all the vehicles and broadcasting that to the customers too?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because your customer doesn't care about you. They don't. You know, I know a guy, he's trumpeted for years. His vision is, I'm going to build $1 billion business in this very specific vertical. And he's going to do it. I have no doubts about it. But he's trumpeted it for years. If he went out and tried to sell people his services by saying, I'm going to build $1 billion business, they're going to say, oh yeah, okay, well, you know, good luck doing it without my money. You know, they really don't care about you. Your customers care about what you can do to help them create a specific outcome. And I think that has to be included in the vision, right? It's like, if I'm a microphone manufacturer, then my vision shouldn't be literally building rocket ships to go to the moon, right? There's just disparity there. But, you know, I can set a goal to have the top rated microphone on, you know, whatever sales channels I use. And that can be a real reasonable vision that I can actually work toward, that's customer centric. Because business, when you boil it down to its lowest common denominators, business is the privilege of serving someone and helping solve their problems.
Right.
And I think that has to be a fundamental part of our vision.
Yeah, I love the analogy you brought up. Like, as soon as we can start wrestling with tangibles, it's part of how I've learned to make sense of things. So I think the other thing I've seen, and why I kind of set you up with that question, is I have found some people who will spend the time doing what Rob's suggesting. Like, they will put aside the couple of hours. They realize that, but then they forget exactly what you said, that it's for them, not for the customer. And so then they go and start sharing their mission with everyone, right? As like you said, as if the customer cares, as if it somehow has meaning to them, instead of doing what I've been trained to do, which is, I guess, avatar-based decision-making, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is who we're serving, and will they like it? Because those microphones, like, are you trying to carve out the niche for best in class, for studio, for live on stage, or for public speaking? Right? Yeah. Those are 3 different units that need to function in 3 different ways. And so, do you want to be in like Tony Robbins' hand or Madonna's hand at the end of the day?
Well, and I think that's a huge part of this, right? And a great question. I think that one of the things we fail to remember about business is just how central our customers are to everything that we do. And it's one of the things that what you're talking about people get wrong when they look at Simon Sinek and the golden circle, right? You know, the why, how, what, and how it builds out from there. And he says, start with the why, because the why drives this visceral emotional reaction with your customers, and they want to buy into this big vision. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. They will buy into that why only so much as it helps them get what they want. And
Okay.
and so when they go out and they're saying, you know, share that why, share that why. Well, only so far as that why relates to your customer.
Yes.
Okay. So this brings up a really powerful question, I think. And I'd like to ask each of you to answer it. And that is, what do you buy? Right? Like obviously being so customer centric for you has probably influenced your buying decisions. Right? And Rob, obviously, like being so, I'm not going to say leadership focused, because like every time I hear you speak, it's about everyone on the team matters. So I'm not even sure how to language that, but if either you could take a couple minutes and tell me what it is, and then if you've noticed like why and how you've bought it because it's important to you.
That's interesting. That's such an interesting question, because there's 1,000 answers to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
but you know, just one that works for you. Like I know this about this. And so they have my loyalty, my trust, my belief, like any example you can come up with. And it doesn't have to be specific to a brand as much as an experience, right?
Yeah, I think I was skeptical, and then became a faithful customer of a subscription service called Stitch Fix.
Okay.
And their service dimension, who they wanted to be, who they aspired to be, i.e., the manifestation of their vision in a customer-centric way,
Yeah.
showed up. They walked their talk. They did the right thing by me in the right way for the right reasons every step of the way. That's what created the loyalty, and their consistency in that tells me they didn't just stop at the visioning. They didn't stop at the mission, but they drove that down through their organization. They had everyone bought in, from the stylist to the person doing the packaging and shipping to the customer service return kind of person that I dealt with. Everyone along the way was behaving consistently, and that created that loyalty that kept me a customer.
Right. So based on the work that you do, right, that you deliver to other companies, you were able to go, you know what, there's people inside of there that I trust.
Yeah.
Perfect. Have you had an experience like that, Zach, where like just as somebody who's a customer expert that you felt, you know, so engaged as a customer or so considered?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because the answer is yes, but they are hard to think of. This is what's interesting.
Yeah.
Because if you look at our psychology, we tend to remember the bad experiences way more than the good experiences.
Yes.
You know, and I know that I've had experiences like that, you know, but I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I can sure think of a half dozen bad experiences that I've had. And, you know, going back to the original question that you asked, how has been being a customer expert really impacted the way that I look at things? It's made me really stop and think when I'm making a purchase decision. What is it that I need from this? Like, what is the outcome that I need, so that I can go in and be very explicit, right? Because well, I'll give you an example. My car just died. And I'm like, okay, I have to buy a new car. So I'm thinking through, okay, I've got a wife, I've got kids. So, it's got to be this way. It's got to have this safety standard. It's got to be this rating. Emotionally, I don't want to feel like an idiot when I drive this thing, or uncool, right? Socially, I don't want to feel uncool. I want to feel safe. I want to feel like this is going to last me a long time. And I think that it's made me really stop and think through those purchase decisions a lot more, and be a lot more structured.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah. And like there's those pieces of a process, right? That like you're walking yourself through the whole thing that you take other people through, because you look at it deeply and thoughtfully. So yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. So just, as we start to kind of wind this up here, I guess, any sort of thoughts? We've been thinking about this episode for, a week or so, kind of been preparing, planning. Is there anything that you would say that is important, just to leave a lasting impression, or drop a sentence or two of wisdom in terms of like the importance of a vision and how it relates to whether it's there when you go in to help a company, or how you can tell it's missing?
I can always tell vision is missing based off of how a team member treats a customer. One of the things that I talk about when I work with clients is the power of water. Call it the water principle, right? If I take this water bottle and I dump it out, it's going to run all over my desk. Mm-hmm. However, if I take that same amount of water and hyper channel it and concentrate it, I can use it to cut structural steel.
Yeah.
And so I can tell based off of the first interaction with the customer support agent, or with whoever is the interface, whether or not that vision is clear, and whether or not everybody buys into the vitality, the importance of the work that they're doing.
Would you say you can even feel that almost in the hiring process, like when they're calling you and asking for help and finding out if you could help them? Like
Oh, absolutely. I can absolutely feel it there. I can even see it in their marketing materials, right? Like if I look at your marketing materials and you're telling me about how great you are, and you're not telling me about me and my problems,
right?
I can tell right there that there's a problem. There's a disconnect that we need to resolve.
Brilliant. Thank you. Rob, any comments on the same?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind with this is if you're going to go do this work that we're talking about, develop a vision, maybe have the understanding that not all people are visionary. So right. Getting the right people in the room, some people with some wonder and some invention, right? High conceptual thinkers, future visionaries. And once you get that initial draft done, then do some socialization with your more concrete folks in the room. It won't make everyone happy to put in that 2 to 4 hours worth of visioning work. For some people, it'll just be an exhausting chore. So yay, go do the work, try to get the right heads in the room, and you'll have a much better outcome.
Perfect. Thank you. I guess the only thing I would chime in on is the way that I like to phrase it to my clients is I've found so many people, they succumb to great marketing, and the marketing says, kind of like, just add water, right? Or the magic beans kind of thing in terms of platforms and systems and those sorts of things. And we love that kind of stuff because I think it removes the responsibility. And so I created this mantra several years ago, and I just believe it more and more every time I go to work on behalf of a customer, working with a client, trying to help them grow or build their business. And that is that the customer journey dictates the platform build, right? If you have that vision, if you have, kind of a congruous team with the stuff that Rob helps with, if you understand who your customers are and how it best serves them to move them through your process, then it makes my job easy because you tell the technology what to do to support that.
Right.
And it's the opposite again, kind of what you were saying earlier, Zach, because I've seen so many other people be marketed to that they have to contort themselves into this set of boxes that are laid out by somebody else. Like those boxes exist because some designer had to come up with something. They can't give you a product that's nothing. But
Yes.
once you acquire those boxes, don't get stuck on the idea that you have to shove your people or your customers into them. You can tell the technology how to behave so that it serves your business and helps like people like these guys actually do their job better. And so that's maybe the last piece that I'd kind of finish with from my end.
Yeah, I love that. That's back to what I was saying for Stitch Fix, right? Let's call it systemic alignment with your vision.
Mm-hmm.
You're evaluating what you're going to do. If it's not serving your vision, then it's probably somehow in conflict with it, right? Think really hard. Sometimes you expand your product offering or you do something different in your business. Well, it's time to go back and look at your vision again and make sure that maybe you need to make an adjustment there and get everything aligned. Because being fully aligned, like you're talking about, consistency of expectation and consistency of experience for your customer. Yeah, very cool.
Brilliant.
I just want to add one thing to that because Rob, I think you hit the nail on the head beautifully, just really well. So I take karate, and one of the things that they talk about in karate is what they call harmony of motion, where if you're throwing a punch, you want your heel to move a certain way, you want your hips and shoulder to all move together. And that to me it's the same thing, right? Every time you're making a motion in your business, you need to make sure that it's aligned and harmonious from the vision all the way down through the strategic to the tactical, so that you can be sure that you're actually aligned and going where you want to go. Really beautifully said, Rob.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we want to get super concrete about this. You'll hear me say this 1,000 times as we go over these episodes, but
yeah,
there's an assessment for that. So we want to do a diagnostic and figure out how aligned you are, executive team, whatever. That's the kind of thing we do. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it matters, then it should be measured, right? It needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you both for being here, and to everybody for watching. And, you know, one of the things that we're here for is actually to create conversations. So as much as this is like a panel discussion, anything you have to say, including just sharing your takeaways in the comments below, helps us and other people. And it just starts the conversation. So we really appreciate that. But most of all, thank you for your time. And yeah, anything else, Zach and Rob, before we say goodbye?
I'll see you on the next episode.
Perfect. Thank you.